It has occurred to me that this is the third video in a row that I am wearing plaid, but I've already taken the thumbnail pictures, so I have committed. Hey there everybody, welcome back to my channel. And welcome to one of my favorite videos to make for this channel. Seriously, I love doing these. I just think they're so much fun. Today, I'm going to be talking about how I would have written The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to talk about what this video is, because I don't want anybody to have any wrong impressions about my intentions when making this type of video. So let's go over like the premise of the video and like the rules that I follow while making these videos, and then we can get into the fun stuff. For those of you who are already familiar with how this goes, I have the timestamps in the description so you can jump ahead, but for those of you who are new, allow me to explain how this works. Basically, what I'm interested in exploring in these types of videos is the idea that you can sit 5 authors down and give them the same basic story premise and say, write this story, go. And you will not have 2 authors writing the same story. Like, you will have 5 completely different stories, which maybe I know, I'm just a giant nerd, but it fascinates me and I like exploring that concept. So that's what I do here. It's not me saying, oh, this author wrote a shitty book and this is how I would have made it better. If I had been the one to write it, it would have been so much better. I'm such an amazing writer. Like, not at all what I'm trying to say. I especially admire Karen M. McManus. I love all of her books. I think she's a very talented author. So that's not what I'm saying at all, like at all. And even though the original concept for these videos actually came from the concept of plot doctoring, which is where a person who enjoys film, they take a movie that they felt wasn't strong and they talk about how they would have made the film stronger, what things they would have added or changed or whatever. Like, that's where my concept came from. Even still, like, that's not the point of this video. Because I found when watching those plot doctors that I agreed with some of the things that the creator was saying they would have changed, but there were things that I was like, I liked this in the original movie, or like, I would have done it different than both of you, and that's more of what I like to explore in these types of videos. Like, I encourage any and all of you to let me know, like, do you like my idea better, or do you prefer how Karen M. McManus did in her book, or would you have done something different than both of us? Like, I want you to talk about that in the comments. So yeah, no shade, no hate. This is literally just for fun, just to see, you know, if I was in the shower one day and I just came up with this exact premise, you know, how would I have written the story? So with that said, let's get into it. Also, I think now is as good a time as any to remind/warn you guys that this is going to be a spoiler heavy video. I mean, I can't compare my version of the book to Karen M. McManus's version without spoiling things. So if you have not read this book, especially, I mean, it's a mystery novel, so you don't want that spoiled for you. So if you haven't read it yet, go read it and then you can come back and watch this video. Or, you know, if you have no intention of reading it, then I guess you can watch, but I highly recommend you read this book. It was pretty good. So yeah, go read it and then come back. But for those of you who have read it or are just not afraid of spoilers, let's dive in. So first things first, I want to say that something I recently realized about the books that I choose to do this type of video for is that there's usually like a core element in the book that really connects to something inside of me. So when I talked about how I would have written Again But Better by Christine Riccio, what really drew me to that book was the idea of a girl who was kind of, you know, introverted and didn't take a lot of chances, who wanted to step outside of her comfort zone. So she goes and does a study abroad program to try and, you know, get herself out of her comfort zone. Like, that really connected to me. I think like the character and like that concept, it just really connected with me. And so I wanted to explore, you know, how I would have written a story with those themes, those elements. Same deal with After by Anna Todd. There was just something about a naive, sheltered, bookish girl falling in love with a bad boy that just really connected with something inside of me. And again, so I wanted to explore how I would have written that story. And it's the same deal here with this book. I almost held it upside down, but it's the same deal with this book. This book at its core, I mean, it's called The Cousins, so it deals with family. And that is something that really is important to me as a person. Y'all, I have a huge freaking family. I have, on my mom's side, she has 4 sisters and they all have kids, and some of those kids have kids. Then on my dad's side, he has a brother and 2 sisters and they have kids, and some of those kids have kids. So I have a huge family. And I will say I'm closer to my mom's side. On her side, you know, we do all the holidays and birthdays and just family game nights and stuff. But, you know, just in general, family is very important to me. So a story about family really I found quite fascinating. And actually, I think the biggest thing that drew me to want to make this video for this book was the fact that I almost felt like Karen and McManus almost didn't explore family enough. And so that's kind of why I want to explore how I would have written this book, because I would have dived even deeper into the theme of family. And so that's why that's what I want to explore in this video, is like how I would have emphasized the theme of family, how I would have made the idea of family a bit more central. Because weirdly, I don't really know. I mean, definitely family was a theme, but it almost felt like not the central theme, which is kind of weird for a book that's called The Cousins, you know? So yeah, like I definitely enjoyed this book. I gave it like 3.5 stars. It kind of fluctuates between 3.5 and 4 stars depending on my mood any given day. But like there's things that like I wish had been done different that I'm going to be talking about in this video. And then also things that I actually, you know, I didn't mind or enjoyed in her book that I would have done differently just because of who I am as a person, you know, my own personal experiences. So yeah, those are the things we're going to explore, so let's go. So in these videos, I always kind of set a baseline, and I say this is like the premise that was a part of the original book that like cannot change for my version. Because, you know, if I was just saying like very vaguely like it has to do with cousins and it has to be a mystery novel, or like it has to deal with a theme of family and it has to be a mystery, like we would be totally off track and there would be nothing even comparable between the 2 books. So I have to do like a base level, this is what has to stay the same between your book and her book, so that, you know, we can kind of do a comparison. So we're just gonna pretend, you know, that I came up with this idea of 3 cousins who are invited to spend the summer with their grandmother after their parents have been disowned for 25 years for an unknown reason. All of those things have to stay the same in my story. Like that is the basic roadmap that I have to follow. But everything else is free game, and ooh baby, am I gonna play with it. So first things first, and remember, I warned you about spoilers. We're gonna talk about spoilers right off the bat. First thing I would have done differently, and this is one of those things that I'm not saying that I minded that Karen and McManus went a different route with this, but just for me personally, because like I said, I wanted to explore the theme of family more. The first thing that I would have made different is I would have had all 3 cousins actually be related, which would sound weird for anybody who hasn't read the book. It's like, well, aren't they, if they're cousins? But for those of you who have read the book, you know Jonah was an imposter. But yeah, Jonah was not actually Jonah. Or well, he was Jonah, but he wasn't the right Jonah. He was a Jonah that the real Jonah hired to pretend to be Jonah. That makes no sense for anybody who has not read the book. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a very interesting plot twist. I knew there was something up with him as I was reading, but I didn't know what it was. He obviously had a secret. You know, he was obviously hiding something, but I wasn't quite sure. And then when they were like, "You're not the real Jonah," I was like, oh, like gasp. But for me personally, as somebody who, again, wants to explore the theme of family in my version of this book, I would have wanted them all to be related. For me, there would be no reason for them to not be related. It was definitely a good plot twist, but I feel like my version of the story would have had, you know, other plot twists that I could have gone with. So I would really want the cousins to be related because I would want to explore their relationship as cousins. Like I said, I have so many cousins, a lot of cousins, an unbelievable amount of cousins. And so honestly, like if I didn't have the rule, I wrote down that it has to be 3 cousins who are invited, I probably would have had more cousins in my version of the story, but we're sticking with 3. So yeah, but I would have made them all related just because that's just more interesting to me. That's what I would want to explore in my story. Also, because in my version I want to put more of a focus on family. I would want to put more focus on like the family reconnecting. So I feel like the dynamics, even at the start of the book, between the family would be a little bit different than Karen and McManus's dynamics that she gave her characters. I feel like I would have the cousins be a little bit more familiar with each other, you know, familiar to the point where they would notice if somebody was not actually their cousin. But I would still like have the tension, the strain between the siblings, because I just think that makes sense, make an interesting story. You know, they need to start kind of pulled apart, like maybe they get together for holidays and stuff, but it's always tense because nobody knows why they are, you know, they were disowned, and so like they all kind of like are like, was it your fault? Was it your fault? And everybody's always passing the blame around maybe. But then like the arc that I would explore is them coming together, because in Karen and McManus's version, two of the siblings do kind of reconnect. The sister and then the youngest brother, they like, you know, make nice and they kind of get together in the end. But then the two older brothers are still total assholes. One of them is just like, he thinks he's the bee's knees, but then the other one is like pretty sure a sociopath. Like he killed somebody in cold blood. So like, sociopath, psychopath, he had something going on there. But in my version, I wouldn't have, like, definitely I would have them all kind of be a little bit dislikable, or like have their dislikable traits, but like nothing that couldn't be overcome, because I would want them in the end to overcome it. You know, whether in my version, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but whether in my version the grandmother was alive or not at the end, you know, either way, or even if like she forgave them at the end, either way, you know, whatever that conclusion was, instead of Karen and McManus's conclusion where it was, you know, the two cousins, Millie and forgettable one whose name I can't remember. Oops, hold on. Aubrey. Sorry, Aubrey fans, my bad. But Millie and Aubrey, they were like in the end getting along, and then Jonah obviously was not the cousin, so like he was with Millie romantically. Like instead of that, my version would end with the family connected. You know, they were together again in a better place. You know, they have reconciled their differences, and the cousins are really close now, like very close, and then the aunts and uncles are really close. That's what I would more like to explore. That's like the arc that I would have taken my story in. Also, while we're still on this general train of thought about, you know, emphasizing family and whatever, I'm almost positive I just would have nixed the idea of romantic subplots entirely. Obviously, I mean, because all of my cousins would be related, we couldn't have Jonah and Millie together anyway. Like, I'm willing to go some places, but incest is not one of them, if you know what I'm saying. This is not Game of Thrones. We're not Game of Thrones up in here. But yeah, so then if that's not an option, then I would either have to add in like another character to be a romantic interest, or maybe a few, you know, depending on if I wanted multiple characters to have a romantic, but like I wouldn't want to do that, because I feel like the focus should be on family and, you know, growing closer as a family. And I just feel like sometimes romantic subplots take away from the main theme. Sometimes they add to it, you know, sometimes the romantic interest is able to elevate the main plot, but sometimes, and I feel like in this situation, and I feel like that was part of what I wasn't a big fan of in Karen and McManus's version, is I did feel like the relationship between Millie and Jonah kind of pulled away from the theme of family. And so I would want to lean into the theme, and thus I would probably cut any romantic subplots. Though I will say, Karen and McManus including it and like having Jonah and Millie be together, I think did add probably most of what I enjoyed about the story, weirdly enough, because oh man, that scene where they get caught kissing each other and everybody thinks that Jonah is kissing his cousin. Oh my god, I was screaming. It was like I was cackling and like, oh my god, they think he's kissing his cousin. Ew! Ew! Bad! Oh no! Oh no! And like that secondhand embarrassment, like I was feeling things. So like I actually really enjoyed that, so it would kind of be a shame to lose that, but like, you know, if I'm just being honest with myself, it wouldn't have happened if I were the one writing this book, so. And then also, while we're still talking about characters, I mean, obviously, just because, you know, Karen M. McManus and I are two very different people, I just feel like my characters would have had different personalities than her characters. And it's not saying, definitely it's not saying that her character, I liked like Millie's personality, and I liked her personality contrasted with Aubrey, even though I thought Aubrey was kind of boring. Sorry. But like, I liked their contrasting personalities and stuff. And I liked the idea of Jonah being kind of like an asshole or whatever. But knowing myself, I probably would have gone in slightly different directions. Honestly, I probably would have based the cousins off of like my own cousin, or maybe like me and my cousins. Like I probably would have had like, not necessarily a self-insert character, but definitely a character modeled after my personality versus the personality of a couple of my cousins. You know, I probably would have drawn just from my own personal family experience, while also, you know, taking into account that in my version there probably also would be money or a fortune on the table, because it makes sense, you know, oh, you're disowned by your grandmother or by your mother, like why does it matter unless there's money on the table? I mean, you know, family, but I would definitely, like, there would be money hungry people, so I would definitely include the idea of like a fortune being on the table. So there would definitely be like dislikable characters, or characters who were like after the money or whatever, like they were in Karen M. McManus's version. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and even like the aunts and uncles, I think I would have had, they just would have been slightly different personalities, not necessarily modeled after my own aunts and uncles, but yeah, like, and especially like I said, I wouldn't have the one uncle be like a sociopath or whatever. Or maybe I would. Nah, I don't think I would have, because I want them all to reunite in the end. So like I said, I want them to be redeemable. So yeah, definitely the character personalities would be different. I honestly can't tell you exactly what they would be. I mean, I could, but like that would take extra brain power, and honestly, I'm not there today. So we're just gonna leave it at that. Another thing I'm almost positive would have been different between my version of this book and Karen M. McManus's version is I definitely don't think that I would have even thought to set this book on an island resort. And that's one of those things that it's like, it would kind of be a shame, because it was a very unique, interesting setting for a mystery novel. Like it was, you know, bright sunshine, beaches and whatever, and like big, you know, fancy mansions and stuff, and like the small town kind of feel, because they're all like, it's just a group of people living on this island together, but also with the added tourist and whatever like that. I liked that. That was one of the things that I really loved about this book. But when I was reading I think it was the acknowledgments of the book, somewhere Karen M. McManus talked about how she got the idea for this family island resort thing based on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, both of which are places that I've never been to in my life. So like, that kind of thing wouldn't ever have come to mind. Like it's just not an experience I could pull from, and thus it would not have been even an option for me. So in my version of the story, it would probably be more of like, it would still be like small town, but like, I don't know, in my head I'm thinking like creepy mansion, maybe not an old mansion, but maybe an old mansion, maybe the type of mansion that's been passed down for generations. You know, like these people are hella rich because they have like generations worth of wealth. And not that I imagine it necessarily all taking place in this mansion. Like I said, pretty much like this family owns this small town, kind of like the family owned the island. They are the richest family, and they own this town, and so when the cousins show up, maybe they don't go to the mansion right away, or they're not allowed in the mansion right away. And again, we'll talk about this in a second, because I have a whole chunk and paragraph written down about that kind of thing. But they get there, and then maybe they're forced to stay in like a creepy old motel or something. But that's kind of like where mine would have ended up being set, you know, like that's the first setting that comes to mind when I think about this idea of kids going to visit their rich, estranged grandmother. So then here we are at the biggest change. Now I will say, you know, I've talked about really liking a lot of the elements of the cousins. I really liked, even though like I personally would have taken a different route. I did like Millie and Jonah's relationship, and I liked the setting. I liked that it was set on this cool island resort place. Like I found that very interesting. But there were two things that I really didn't like that ended up knocking the rating down as far as it did, to like the 3.5 stars. The first of which was the plot twist. Now I will say, I did think it was like creative, and it definitely was like a holy shit, I did not see that coming, but also it was kind of I didn't see that coming because, I mean, there were hints dropped, but I don't know if there was enough, but that's more of me like critiquing the book, and that's not what this is about. I'll talk more about that kind of stuff in my recent reads video whenever I get around to making that. But yeah, like it was a good plot twist in that it was surprising, but also, honestly, frankly, it didn't make that much sense to me. Because like, fine, yeah, the grandma has been dead all 25 years, and the letter that was sent to the kids was sent to her by the woman who then began to impersonate their mother. Like, whatever, fine, that's fine. And like she brings in her sister to pretend to be her, and then, you know, she gets the town lawyer and the town doctor to also like feed into this and whatever. Like, okay, cool. But she was still going to all of the outings, and like she was agreeing to see the cousins, and the cousins had like seen pictures of her and stuff, but they were meeting her and they weren't realizing that this was not the same woman, and like they didn't even realize that the Teresa woman wasn't actually Teresa, it was her sister. Like, sisters don't look identical unless they're identical twins, and that was not established that she was like her identical twin or whatever. So like, how did nobody realize this was not the right woman? Like, how? And Karen McManus said, like, she had the character say, people see what they expect to see. That's like some Harry Potter bullshit logic. No offense, but like, that's like when they say, oh, muggles don't expect to see magic, so they don't see magic. And like, you can forgive it in Harry Potter because it's like, ah, it's magic, you know, there's magical rules. But like, this book was supposed to be like real life. You're telling me not one person went, hey, wait a second, you don't look anything like the woman you're supposed to be. Like, nobody, like maybe when she got like older, and then it's like, you know, people like look a little bit different when they get older, sure, fine, whatever. But like, it was implied that she's been going out to all of these parties and stuff for a very long time. It just didn't make sense to me, and thus, because it doesn't make sense to me in that plot twist, obviously that's not a plot twist that I personally would have come up with for this story. Now, I'm not saying that I have a better plot twist in mind. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying like, this plot twist was shit and here's what should have happened. No. Honestly, I'm a little baffled at what a better plot twist could have been. So like, you're probably like, okay, so you're like shitting all over this plot twist, but then you don't have a better, yes. Yes, exactly. Like, I'm not, I mean, I can tell you what I'm thinking, but I'm not saying it's better by any stretch of the imagination. It might be worse. So don't expect this to be like some life-changing plot twist that I've come up with, because it's not. So first things first, like leading up to the plot twist, what I think I would have done is I would have sincerely not had the parents know why they were disowned by their mother. In this book, they did kind of know, you know, everybody except like the youngest son. Poor Archer, he had no fucking clue. But everybody else is like, oh yeah, like we killed a man, like guess we got what we deserved. But like, in my version, I definitely think I would have leaned into the mystery of like, nobody knows for sure, but also everybody has their suspicions because everybody has secrets. But like, I would have them be separate secrets that everybody has, and maybe like this person knows this person's secret and this person knows this person's secret, but nobody knows everybody's secrets. And so people are able to like throw around blame or cast accusations or like assume whose fault it was, or maybe they blame themselves or whatever, but like nobody knows for sure. And I think that would be like an interesting dynamic to explore. And then, so I have two possible plot twists in mind. But again, if I were actually writing this book, I would have spent time to really like work out the plot twist, figured out any plot holes that, you know, came from these plot twists or whatever, but this is just me spitballing, honestly. This is like the first two things that come to mind when I think about how I would have written this book. So again, they're not gonna be life-changing. So don't hold me to them, and if there's plot holes, just forgive me, because I didn't write this book, and I'm not gonna write this book, So my first idea is that the real reason that they were all disowned was because somebody greedy was like manipulating them all behind the scenes, kind of like the lawyer and Teresa and all of them were manipulating the siblings and stuff, but like it would be like this one singular person, and I don't know who this person is, so don't ask me. It could be, I don't know, the evil butler or somebody, or maybe it is the lawyer or something, I don't know. Somebody, though, is like greedy and wants like this family's money and stuff, and so, you know, they want to be the one who this lady leaves all of her fortune to in her will or whatever. So they trick the kids into leaving with a letter, kind of like, you know, in the book, I Know What You Did or whatever. They trick the kids into leaving, and then they also trick Mildred into thinking that like her family left her with like a separate letter. So everybody is kind of duped, you know, like everybody has been tricked into thinking that like they've been disowned or whatever. And again, this is also that this greedy person can be like, your family left you, they don't love you, so you shouldn't give them anything in your will. And like in my mind, like Mildred is, you know, a kind old woman who's just heartbroken, you know, that her family didn't want anything to do with her anymore. They weren't even gonna stick around for the money. Like they literally just hated her so much that they left her behind. Like, isn't that heartbreaking? I kind of like that idea. And then the family's like, we don't know what we did. Like, we have thoughts, we have ideas, but we're not sure. And this greedy person is able to somehow keep them from like connecting and like figuring out that this was all like a ruse by like some middleman. And I don't know, again, I don't know how that person could have prevented that. That's a plot hole that I would have worked out if I actually cared enough to, but I don't. So my second option is that the person who's manipulating them all, instead of like sending just the separate letters and keeping them all apart, instead they like lied to Mildred, or the Mildred character or whatever, about like something that her kids did but didn't actually do. And either way, like with either plot twist, the cousins come in and they solve the mystery and they find out this person's been manipulating you this entire time, and plot twist. That's kind of where my brain goes, you know, like, and it's similar in some ways to the, but I guess what it is that was kind of what I thought was happening the whole time I was reading this book. So maybe it's almost too obvious, you know, maybe my idea is too obvious and I would have needed to come up with something a little bit twistier, because, you know, that's what I thought was going on in this entire book, and then it turned out I was wrong. But yeah, so either way though, somebody who wasn't Mildred would have to be the one who invited the kids to come stay with her. And I don't know who that would have been in my version. I don't know if I would have gone with one. I don't think I would have gone with one of the siblings though. Maybe somebody in the town who had their suspicions, and so they hoped that by getting the cousins to come and meet their grandmother, they could figure out what was wrong, and then, you know, that person who's manipulating them tries to keep them away from Mildred as much as possible. And then, you know, when they do eventually get to meet up with Mildred, at first she's so hurt and heartbroken that she doesn't want to talk to them, so they're not really able to figure things out. But then slowly they start to come to the realization that maybe there's something going on here, you know, maybe it's not all is not what it appears or something. Again, I don't know. Like, this is the hardest part to say how I would have written it, because I have written a mystery novel, and like, yeah, I had to think long and hard. Like, it took me years to figure out what the big plot twist was going to be that was like twisty enough, unexpected enough, but still like made sense in the grand scheme of the story. So like, I would really have to sit on this to come up with an actual like really good plot twist, but that's like at least the general idea that my brain is going when it comes to the plot twist. And then I said that there were two things that I didn't like that knocked down my rating for this book. And the first one was the plot twist. The second one was who was involved in the climax where the plot twist was revealed and then there was like the big action scene. Why? Tell me why? Why was it only Aubrey who was involved in the climax? I mean, and Uncle Archer, but like, why Uncle Archer? The book is called The Cousins. The Cousins. Why weren't the cousins involved in the big climax? Why was it only one of them? Why was it the most boring one? What the hell? Again, that's more of a critique than anything, but it really did bother me. I was not happy with the way the climax went down. Like, I liked the premise of the climax, you know, where they learn about the plot twist and then they almost die, but like, I really honestly expected, yes, Archer to come and help, but I expected Millie and Jonah to actually be in the car with Archer and like come storming in all together. I didn't expect them to just stay behind and not be involved at all. So yeah, I mean, obviously in my version, it wouldn't have even occurred to me to not have all three of them involved in the climax because they're all three of the main characters. They should all be involved. I'm sorry. This was something that really bothered me. So it does kind of sound like I'm shitting on Karen and McManus for this, but I just think it was not the best choice that she could have made. So in my version, all three cousins would have been involved in whatever the climactic plot twist moment was. Like, they all would have been there. They all would have gone through the danger together, and would they have all survived it? Who knows? But yeah, like that's definitely something that would have been different in my version. But yeah, so there you have it. That is how I would have written The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. So now I'm interested, let me know how you would have written it. Would you have made some of the same choices I made? Would you have made some of the same choices she made? Are you glad that you didn't write it because you would have butchered it? Did I butcher it? Is it a great thing that Karen M. McManus wrote this book? Like, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you disagree with both of us? Do you think there was a whole other way that neither of us thought of to tell this story? I would love to know in the comments. Also, one last time, I would like to reiterate, I am a big fan of Karen M. McManus. I loved One of Us is Lying and Two Can Keep a Secret. I haven't read One of Us is Next, but like, I'm a big fan of her, and I think her writing in The Cousins was great. I think some of the choices she made were really great. There was just those two big things that really I didn't love, but like, overall, I think she's an amazing author. I think she's definitely more successful than me. She has how many books published? 4, and I have a big fat stinking 0, so obviously she knows what she's doing. And this wasn't me, again, shitting on her or her books or anything. I really admire her, actually. Like, if she ever blurbed one of my books, I would faint and cry. So I think she's really cool, and it's because I admire her so much that I hold her to such a high standard, which is why some of the choices she made in this book did kind of disappoint me, but like, overall, this was not me shitting on her. I think she's fantastic. But yeah, once again, I had very much fun making this video. I just love talking about how I would write books and stuff like that. It's just, ooh, it tickles me. So hopefully you enjoyed it too. If you did, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!